about to say.
Today, we're going to go through some of the biggest mistakes that we've made in the gym, and particularly the biggest mistakes I see people make frequently. And when I say in the gym, I more so just mean in relation to their body transformation. So that can be outside of the gym, but habits that influence performance within the gym. Some of those things that people might think is the right thing to do, but is not. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the first one that comes to the brain is too much work. I think people, So I think, and this kind of, you can take this down different avenues as far as, sustainability, as far as realistic expectations go. But, everybody thinks that when they first start their body transformation, they're going to, 7 days a week, twice a day. I'm going to wake up early and do cardio, and then I'm going to lift in the evening, and I'm going to eat 1,000 calories a day.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah. But you make a good point.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think you are, man? Like, do you think you're someone that has no responsibilities, that has no, job, no kids, no other thing going on, but, you can only realistically dedicate so much of the stuff to your process, to this process. But where I was going with that is I see people do that, and then they can't sustain it, and then they quit because it's not what they wanted.
And it's whenever they can't sustain it and they quit, it's not even... When they quit, they drop all of those good habits. Mm-hmm. And they completely start back from ground zero. And what I've noticed is they completely forget the idea of even pursuing the body transformation at all, like any further. Yeah. Like they just completely give up, which is horrible.
And I've had this conversation with actually quite a few different clients recently, but it's kind of the conversation of a light switch versus a dial. Right? And so you need to be able to crank your dial up or crank your dial down, not switch your flip all the way on or all the way off.
Yeah, because there's only, doing it that way, obviously there's only one. There's only one choice.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You flip it up or you flip it down.
Exactly. And so if you're in that mind state of, well, I can't do 7 days a week and I can't, commit to 1,000 calories a day and I can't commit to all these ridiculous, protocols that I've made up in my head that are going to get me where I want to go. So why do it at all? And it's a fatal mistake, man, because that turns into an all or nothing mentality,
Yeah, like, hey, you're not a movie character. Yeah. Like, if you really want to, let's say in this case, you want to run a marathon.
Sure.
Okay. If you really want to do that and, you're big right now, you weigh a lot, and it just doesn't look realistic, well, hey, break it down and ask yourself what you can commit to now. And that can be something as simple as walking a mile. Like, everybody, or at least most people, should be able to walk a mile. And, do that after a couple weeks. And once you get comfortable with that, maybe start light jogging. And whenever you start getting tired or out of breath on that light jog, just stop and keep on walking. And eventually, the goal is to be able to run that mile, just 1 mile. And then after that, you can start running a little bit more than a mile. But the whole point is you'll get to that end goal, which in this case would be the marathon, if you slowly build up to it. Like, you can't expect yourself to get up tomorrow and lose 50 pounds or run a marathon or be able to bench, what you've been wanting to bench for however long.
Sure.
There's prerequisites.
Sure.
And for you to even expect that you can just, do whatever in a month or however long short term, it's just unrealistic, and you're setting yourself up for failure and pain.
So I have two things to say to that. Number one is, we've talked about this before, people underestimate what they can do in 6 months and they overestimate what they can do in 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so time is usually on your side, unless you got some kind of competition, unless you have some sort of date, and usually you can make time on your side if you give yourself enough time.
Yeah. But
I'm glad you used the example of marathon running or just running in general, because man, and I can't even make up a high enough percentage in my head to I feel like everybody who wants to start running, everybody that's like, man, I want to be a runner, I want to start running, their first thought is like, I'm going to try to do 3 miles a day. No. And they go from, and it's like, man, no offense, but to your point, who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like, You can't walk into the gym and bench 275 first time under there.
Yeah,
you know,
you're
and
gonna
I
get
don't know if
crushed.
that's a fair comparison, but like, point being, like, there's a reason your knees and your ankles and everything is killing the next day, man. It's because like you have not primed or prepped yourself for that. You haven't earned that, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And that's not to demotivate or discourage anyone from wanting to work hard, but like, be realistic with yourself, man. Like, you would be much better off, like, to your point, trying to walk a mile a day and see if you can, improve in other places. Like, try to make your recovery better. Go to bed earlier. Get better sleep. Eat cleaner.
Yeah,
Drink more water. Like, you have other places to improve other than the one place that's causing your body stress.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And it's small improvements too. So,
Small
Alex,
improvements with that time compounded.
yeah, exactly. Alex knows that and sometimes I still am the all-in or all-out guy. And I thought that was the right way to do things because I was able to get a lot of things done in a short period of time. But right now I'm actually trying to switch to small improvements over a long period of time because the problem with doing these, short transformations is... One, they're just not realistic for most people. Two, you're not instilling any of the positive habits that come with maintaining whatever transformation that you're trying to do. And three, at the end of the day, that's the easy way out. It's very easy to, not very easy, but it's a lot easier to sacrifice everything and pay attention to one thing for a month or two than it is to instill these habits that will actually benefit you in the long term.
Yeah.
Like, hey, it's not about the next 2 months.
Yeah.
It's
the rest of your
about
life.
the next however long you have to live, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And again, it's just because we see these or we hear these stories and we see these amazing people that have made those amazing transformations, and we think that is the norm and that's how it's supposed to be, when it's not how it's supposed to be.
Well, I also think with the all-in mentality, and again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the all-in mentality maybe right off the bat when you haven't even crawled yet. But again, you become a little bit more result-oriented rather than process-oriented. And when you're
Yes.
process-oriented, it's forever, man.
It is forever.
Because if you can be process-oriented and you can focus on the day-by-day, keep your calories where they need to be, keep your movement at a certain place, and try to make it a little better the next day,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how you're going to get there, man.
Yeah.
So I really think that's an underappreciated piece of it is being process-driven, and something that's so process-dependent, You can't just lift and make a body transformation. You got to watch your calories too. You can't just watch your calories and make a body transformation. You got to resist and strain too. There's multiple facets to this, so it's like if you can be just dedicated to the process around each of them, because realistically, man, like it's all pretty simple. Like it just takes time and it takes consistent effort.
Mm-hmm.
None of it is rocket science.
Yeah, it's not magic.
People have done it before. People have done it for a while, and people will continue to do it at different degrees of success. But a big part of that is whether you trust the process or not. And if you don't, and you think you have to do this all in, this 100% or nothing at all, then it's not realistic. And man, you're gonna have days where like you have to work for 16 hours, and then what happens if, I don't know, you can't get your workout in? Then are you gonna just blow your diet too? Or if your diet gets messed up, are you going to blow your workout too? Or if you miss sleep, are you going to, blow your diet? I mean, there's all these different things, and it's like you have to be sure that if you're committing to the process of each of them rather than trying to be, this perfect slate all around or nothing at all. So
Yeah, because that sounds like a daunting task to have to keep constant track of all of those things. But again, like you're saying, if you're focusing on the process, then those things that especially if you're not putting so much like responsibility on yourself at the get-go, when it comes to whatever transformation you're wanting to make, and you're adding to that responsibility slowly and over time, what's going to happen is those things that you had to think about in the beginning whether it be, food journaling, taking those walks, or, your morning walks, going to the gym, they become non-conscious habits. You no longer have to think about them. So you're able to take on more responsibility. But in the beginning, if you do put on all this responsibility on yourself, imagine having to wake up in the morning, going straight for a run, and then coming back, and then going, okay, now I have to track my food. Like, having to do all these things consciously, it's a pain in the ass.
Right, and it becomes much more mental effort than it needs to be, and so...
Yeah, and you only have so much willpower.
And I feel like I sound like a broken record here, man, but it's like, if you're trying to say, I'm going to eat this many calories and this many grams of protein, this many grams of carbs, and this many grams of fat, and you haven't even food journaled before, I mean, what are you thinking, man? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I could go and be an NFL player having not played football since I was a 13-year-old kid. You know what I mean? Like, there's steps and there's levels to this process, and it's not to belittle or downgrade anybody who might be in a beginner stage, but it's like, if you can respect the steps and respect the process and follow it through, it's going to make that much more sense. It's going to be that much easier. Like, to circle back to math we were talking about earlier, like, dude, imagine trying to do algebra if you don't know how to do division or multiplication or any of the simple stuff. Like, there's prerequisites, man. Like, you have to, and if you can honor that process and get good at that process, like, it pays off. You can't be a black belt before you're a white belt.
Yeah, all you're going to do is set yourself up for disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in high school, I went to go compete at the state powerlifting meet here in Texas, and I thought that I was, really strong. At the time, obviously, there's a bunch of people who were way stronger than me, and there's this one kid, his name was Joseph Pena, and at the age of, I think he was 17 or 18, but he was at that powerlifting meet, and this dude squatted, I think it was 1,005 pounds or 1,025, 1,035, one of those at that age. And I started, I started comparing myself to him, I didn't understand how he was so much stronger. But then as I learned, his dad was a powerlifting coach, and he had been powerlifting, specifically specializing in squat, since he was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I had just started powerlifting
Yeah.
The year before. So it's like,
how can you make that comparison? How can you
exactly, how can I put myself up to those expectations so soon?
If he had been powerlifting for 8 years and you for a year, he has 8 times the amount of time under his belt that you do.
Exactly.
And it's like, how can you expect yourself to have flown through the process as quickly?
Yeah, and if, again, like, what I felt at that time was, disappointment. Mm-hmm. And there's no point in feeling that, like, we are amazing and we can do amazing things. It's all about setting ourselves up to do those amazing things. And if we're setting ourselves up for, again, like failure or something that we just cannot maintain realistically, whether you believe it or not, reality is reality. You're just going to be disappointed in the end. So, man,
and those micro progressions too, those steps in the process, like those steps build confidence for the bigger stuff.
Yes.
Man, like, how are you supposed to squat 1,000 pounds if you don't know that you can squat 900? How are you supposed to squat 900 if you don't know that you can squat 800?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that comes down to simply, like, do your diligence, man. Like build up over time. Don't expect yourself to make these crazy leaps. Like, commit to the process. Take your daily wins and let those compound, man.
Compound. Yes. I'm actually reading this book right now. I forget the name of it. It's called I think it's called Compounding.
Compounding?
Something like that. But one of the things, if I know, right?
Yeah,
like, very generic. But hey, one of the things that he actually has me doing, I don't remember the author's name, that he has me doing as an exercise for just improving whatever part of my life that I want to improve, is journaling. Well, specifically tracking. So let's say, I know you recommend food journaling a lot.
Right.
But just in general, if there's something that you do want to improve on, whether it be, losing weight, running, or improving your cardiovascular, whatever, improving your strength. Start tracking the habits that actually pertain to whatever you're trying to improve. So for food journaling, maybe you can start off, if you don't really want to commit to using the MyFitnessPal app and searching in for all the foods and all that.
Just
by the
write it
way,
down.
it's really easy. Just write down what you eat. And one of the big things is keeping the notepad in your pocket the whole time and just doing it. And what'll happen is you'll become aware of those habits that are pertaining to whatever you want to improve. And I think that that's the first step, is just awareness, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It definitely isn't in the food journaling space, but yeah, to know where you want to go, you have to know where you are.
Yes.
And we've talked about that before on here too. It's like, man, if I want to run 10 miles and I don't even know how many I can run right now, I got to start logging down. Okay, this day I did a mile. By this day, I got to be able to do 2 miles. And now we're kind of talking about like reverse engineering your goals a little bit.
Yeah.
If I want to bench press 300 pounds, I got to figure out, and I want to do that within a year. I got to figure out what day I got to do 275 by. I got to know what day I got to do 250 by. And so when you break those down to those check marks, and again, that circles back to our confidence building, our micro wins, our daily wins. Like when you do those things and you follow within that process, like you find a way to get yourself there. So you have to be conscious first. You can't just be like, yeah, I want to bench 300. Let me just throw around some weight today. Let me just throw around some weight today. Let me just throw around some weight today.
Don't work like that.
And just
imagine just throwing around calories in your diet.
Yeah, you're trying to stumble there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're hoping you get there, and man, I can't tell you how many times people tell me, I say, "What's your diet like?" And they say, "I eat healthy."
Yeah, right.
What does that mean, man?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
And to them, it could mean going out to eat every day at a quote-unquote healthy place.
Yeah.
Where they're consuming a shitload of pita bread and...
Well, maybe they picked a salad, but it's got like 4 servings of ranch dressing. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
man.
There's just like... But if you start writing that stuff down, like you find some answers within there. It's like, oh, I have all these veggies in here, but I also have 4 servings of, whatever kind of salad dressing I'm using. I'm throwing all this shit in here. I'm using 4 cups of coffee creamer a day. You know what I mean? Like you find a lot of your answers within there. So if that day comes where you're trying to bench press that 300 pounds, you're trying to run that 10 miles and you don't do it, you look through there and be like, oh, it's probably because I didn't bench 275 first. It's probably because I wasn't able to run 5 miles first.
Yeah. And what I am absolutely loving about this tracking thing is it doesn't even take any effort to improve. Like once you are aware, and if you truly desire that goal, you will make the changes. Because imagine if your goal is to lose weight and you eat a donut and then you have to write in your accountability journal, hey, I just ate 3 donuts. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you're going to feel guilty as hell writing it in there.
Right.
If you even did decide to eat those donuts after all, because now you're actually making conscious choices. And that's the big thing. I guess just it forces you to at least be responsible with your choices or be accountable for your choices.
Yeah.
It's no longer just mindless consumption or mindless actions.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's your answer too, because if you can open that food journal, and again, like we were just saying, if you can't run, if you didn't run 5 miles, why would you be able to run 10? You didn't bench 275, why would you be able to do 300? You can't just expect yourself to magically land there.
Yeah, and then the cool thing is, whenever you are, improving, for every positive thing that you do and every positive thing that you're writing down, or even if you're not writing it down, every positive thing that you're doing toward that goal, you're becoming that person that you have to be in order to achieve that goal.
Right.
So it's all like a cool process that complements each other. Mm-hmm. But, you have to do it.
You got to be conscious, man. You can't just expect yourself to stumble into it. Mm. So, gosh, that was a big tangent on one thing that people...
That was.
Yeah, that was like 20 minutes on one thing. Okay, so let's move on from that point. So, what do you got?
Biggest mistakes in the gym, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Not paying attention to the actual exercises. So
You're talking about going in there and just kind of winging it, picking this machine and that machine and this machine and this exercise, and then
not even that. Like, that you can do bench press two different ways. Like, you can drop it down on your chest and push it back up, and that's still a bench press. Or you can, do it close and focus on using your triceps, pressing it. That's a bench press too. Or, there's a bunch of different ways. But
you make a great point.
Yeah, so right now what I've been practicing is being intentional with the way that I'm actually lifting the weights and understanding what it's actually taking or what muscle groups I'm actually trying to use whenever I'm lifting, and stability and just a bunch more things that I'm learning is actually going into weightlifting rather than just executing the exercise mindlessly.
Yeah, I would say it's more about focusing on the intention of each rep rather than just checking the box of, oh yeah, I did this. So like, I like that you said that, because something that I experience a lot with people is, someone will ask me about leg training, and particularly guys will be like, man, I can't grow my legs no matter what I do. And then you go watch them squat, and number one, their mobility shit, but more importantly, well, maybe not more importantly, but because of that, their squats are like, man, their knee is hitting like 120 degrees max. Like we're talking about quarter squats, and we're loading it up, and they're like, man, I'm going heavy, I'm training hard, but man, it's like, yeah, but what are you getting out of that? How much range are you putting that quad through? I mean, and everyone wants to talk about like, you got to load it up, but if you're not getting what you need out of that exercise, what's the point? The X's and O's of what you write down don't mean anything unless you've hit a certain quality standard, So I don't know, man. It's a you can squat for your quads, you can squat for your glutes and hams, or you can just squat for your ego and do quarter reps and just load up the bar as heavy as you can.
Yeah.
And it's what's your goal?
Not only that, but you're a lot more prone to injury. If you're not paying attention to how you're executing these exercises, and then, like Alex is saying, you're a lot more prone to not getting the results that you want because, like, for example, you can do bicep curls and only use your forearms and your shoulders and your back.
Yeah.
And
then you're like, why aren't my biceps growing? I'm doing 20 sets of biceps a week.
Yeah,
it's like,
you can do that with like 80 pounds and, for 10 reps, whatever.
Yeah.
But then, like, personally, in my experience, I can do that for like 80 pounds for 10, but then I go down to 30-pound dumbbells, and I keep my elbows in one place, and I'm kind of like leaning forward and focusing on my biceps.
Yeah.
And I can do 3 sets of 8, and then I have to stop because my biceps are so pumped, and they're not used to feeling that, and I don't feel it in my shoulders, and don't feel it in my back.
And I think you see a lot of, and I don't mean to pick on anybody or anything, but I think a lot of the times, when you notice people in the gym who maybe have like an overdeveloped body part, and usually maybe it's something like traps, or it's something like glutes or quads or something like that, that typically means like they've put themselves in a position with so many exercises to let things be biased.
Yeah.
If you're missing, if you're missing your pecs, but you're benching 315 and your shoulders and triceps are huge, it's like, there's your answer, man. Your bench press is not for your pecs, it's for your shoulders and your triceps. You know what I mean?
Are you trying to like hit off some shade on me or something?
On you, is that your same deal? Well, I think your chest has really came up recently, but no, I mean that
and that's specifically because of the exercise execution. Like before, and I was just talking to you about this earlier. When I used to bench, I would drop it down into my chest, and then I throw it up with my triceps. So again, that is a bench press. I'm bringing it down to my chest and I'm pressing it up, but I wasn't using my pecs at all, and I even had flabby pecs, and they were small, and I even have pictures like before and after, and it's crazy. I've only been intentionally benching with my pecs and my upper back as of like the past month and a half. No, less than a month and a half, about a month now, and the growth in my pecs has been crazy.
Way different, yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, I'm also focusing, like I said earlier, on stability and making sure that everything is symmetrical whenever I'm lifting. And what I'm noticing from that is a lot of the pain that I had in like my shoulders, my pec. A lot of times I have it on my right side. I don't know why that is, but it went away. Like I don't have any shoulder problems anymore. I don't have any pec problems anymore.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm focusing on actually lifting correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on deadlifts, so I guess this all came about deciding to compete in December,
Sure.
and I wanted to see where I was at with my bench squat and deadlift. So, I was watching my videos, looking at my weaknesses and all of that, seeing where I can improve, and talking to other people about what they see, where they see that I can improve, and just bringing all that information together. It wasn't even intentional, but I guess now I'm realizing that the weakness was just exercise execution. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to be doing, or the exercises that I needed to be doing correctly.
Right.
And now that I know that, now that I know the proper way to do these exercises, and I'm still learning, it's not like I know 100%, I'm still learning every day. I'm able to keep injury, like my pain and that injury thing, low. I'm able to grow the parts that I want to grow more efficiently, and I'm able to build my confidence ultimately because now I'm on an exact plan, and just everything is improving. Like it's fun again to lift because it's no longer just picking shit up and putting it down. It's like a science to it.
Yeah, it's so interesting how much more enjoyable it actually becomes when you address your weak link, because everybody wants to ignore their weak link, and I'm personally like super guilty of this in that I've pretty much had a weak back like my whole. I mean, I would say since I ever started lifting, like I was just never good at stabilizing my scapula, moving my scaps, and we're on the path to changing that right now. I felt really good about my training recently, but when I was prepping for my first show when I was 17. My back, man, it wasn't there. Like it was non-existent.
Yeah.
And man, I just remember I was literally doing 40 sets of back a week. Yeah, and just number one, obviously piss poor intensity if you're doing 40 sets.
Yeah.
But my biceps in relation to everything else, huge.
Oh, really?
My rear delts in relation to everything else, huge. My teres, huge.
What are teres?
It's kind of the armpit muscle that's above your lat.
Okay.
My lats, non-existent.
Oh my God.
My traps, non-existent. My lower back, existent.
Yeah.
But so point being, like, I was just pounding the volume into the dirt thinking that more is better, more is better, more is better. But unfortunately, if you have a pile of crap and then you triple your pile of crap, you have a tripled pile of crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So you have to, that's why, man, the quality always has to come before the quantity. And that's just a matter of circling back, conscious attention, man. Being sure that you're getting what you need. And you don't have to be perfect. Like, you don't have to be perfectly isolating your quads on a barbell back squat. It's okay to use some other things. You don't have to be perfectly biasing your pecs in a dumbbell bench press. You can use some other stuff, but you do
want to strive
it's a pretty
for that
good
perfection.
It's a pretty good sign. Like if you're not feeling the muscle that you're intending to work or the muscles surrounding a movement that you're intending to train, what do you think's happening?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think's happening? People like to use the word like mind-muscle connection. That's going to be easier and harder with different muscle groups and different movement patterns and different exercise selection.
Definitely.
But man, if you can't, if you're going through a barbell row and all you feel is your elbows and your forearms and your lower back, why are you doing a barbell row?
Why?
Yeah. Because some guy on YouTube told you to. Or because somebody in a bodybuilding forum said you have to do barbell rows to get a huge back. Spoiler, you don't. You don't have to do anything. You have a lot of freedom to this game of resistance training and body transformation. You have to be willing to go against the grain and leave your ego at the door and figure out what works for you.
That's the biggest thing. You got to figure it out. Like, it's not just, even after hearing this, it's going to be hard for you to go in and, go in the gym and let's say you're doing dumbbell bench press and you want to focus specifically on your pecs. Maybe you won't feel your pecs right at first. Well, hey, honestly, you're just going to have to maybe educate yourself on movements that more isolated just so you can feel that feeling, just so you can understand how it feels like, and then go back to your dumbbell presses, but yeah, just experiment and understand also that yeah, you may be, if you are having progress right now, and you're not doing like we're saying, focusing on executing these exercises correctly,
It'll bite you in the ass soon.
yeah, exactly. Right now, you may be fine, but hey, you're gonna get to the point where you are having imbalances,
You are always only as good as your weakest link.
yes,
Always, man.
like I've been powerlifting for 5 years now, I think almost 6, and I'm just barely getting my form under control because of this realization that I need to be doing this. And all of that time I could have been focusing on this, and I could have been at such a higher level, but because I chose the quick solution and all of that, I'm having to figure out
Trying
my
to just
whole
move
game.
weight.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was, which, hey, I don't blame myself. I'm not thinking the way that I was thinking back then. And there's so many more resources out there now to actually teach people things. But, if you do know this is the right route and you're still neglecting it, then hey, get your shit under wraps.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be wasting, just a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
And I know you said that you did the 30 sets.
40.
40 sets.
All piss poor intensity, but
So, did you just keep on training it because
I just
you were like
thought,
instantly recovering because you weren't even using it?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't get sore. Like, I was just going through the movements, and so I was doing like, and what was funny too was I was covering all my bases as far as anatomical movements go.
Okay.
It's just that I wasn't moving my scaps. I wasn't actually engaging with my back. Right.
Yeah.
I was just pulling.
It's
And
easy
so, like,
not to engage.
Yeah,
your
man.
back.
And so I was doing like, I do pull downs, and I do neutral pull downs. I do wide rows, and then I do narrow rows. Like, I do shoulder extension, and then I do like, I mean, I was doing just everything under the sun just to be sure I was hitting every angle. But again, that pile of crap was just tripling, quadrupling in size, and it's not going to change anything, man. So again, at that first show, rear delts, teres, and biceps were all killing, but lats and traps non-existent, man.
Yeah, man. Because so when I was, and this will actually like kind of pairs with what you're saying. When I wasn't really caring about the exercise execution, I could do so much things. Like, I could just do sets and sets back to forth, different exercises all day, and I would never feel the need to recover because nothing was ever sore.
Yeah.
And now that I'm like intentionally doing things my way, correctly for me, I've had to cut back so many exercises. I've had to cut back just so much like volume, so much workload, because now that I'm focusing on one thing and I'm actually able to hit it specifically, I'm sore for the next 3 days.
And that word is efficiency.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's an interesting point because there's a lot of bodybuilders these days aren't just pounding the volume into the dirt anymore. A lot of them are taking, a couple sets to failure per muscle group, whatever, 5 sets, 8 sets a session, just to taking it to the absolute bank and just, anatomic, like contracting the right ways and just taking it to the bank. And so it's like, man, you don't need those 40 piss poor sets because it's because why? You're just writing it down. You're not actually stimulating what you're trying to stimulate. You're not using what you want to use. And so, you make a great point because that circles back to like, even if like you're doing legs, like, let's say I'm doing legs and I'm squatting, 200 pounds. Well, if I'm dive bombing it and then just popping up and using momentum and swinging, like, it's not, number one, obviously it's not challenging my tissue, but it's not challenging my central nervous system either. So the next day, like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
My joints, tendons and ligaments might not be.
Yeah.
But like, I'm chilling. Versus, you can, if you're executing and we're throwing around numbers now, but let's say you're executing 3-4 times as well, but using half the load, you're going to be wrecked the next day, man.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't emphasize enough, like that quality standard just always has to be there, because if it's not, everything else is trash.
Yeah.
Everything else doesn't mean anything to you. It's literally a waste of your time. If anything, I would say it probably is hurting you because it's tearing your joints apart.
I think it is hurting you.
So I don't know, and I think, and you know what, it definitely is hurting you, man.
Yeah.
Because if you're not. If you're going through poor movement patterns, you're reinforcing poor movement patterns.
That's what it is.
So not only are you not doing anything, you're making the problem worse.
Yep.
So swallow the ego, man.
Yeah, that's the toughest part,
Really what it
because
comes
you
down
gotta realize that on your own. Like, a bunch of people can tell you, but unless you choose to actually improve, and this is an improvement, unless you choose it, then you're not going to do it. So when I was tracking down my weakness and things, obviously a bunch of people have told me before, to do form correctly and all that shit, and I never listened to them, because why am I going to listen to somebody else?
Because we're all blinded by our ego, man.
Yeah, exactly. But once I actually started,
all of us.
yeah, once I actually started looking at my weaknesses for what they actually were, and looking at my videos and seeing how I was executing these, and I realized it on my own.
Right.
Like, it was an easy switch to make. It was an easy choice to make.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I need to get this under control. And that's when I started, barely touching my chest on bench, squatting correctly to depth, and deadlifting not with my lower back. Mm-hmm. And another thing, and I think I said this earlier, whenever I started doing these exercises correctly, all the pain went away. Like, for example, I couldn't do shoulder press.
Yeah.
Like, I sucked at shoulder press, and for years, shoulders have just been a weakness, just because every time I do shoulders, I'll get I don't know exactly what it is, but this will just start hurting like crazy, to the point where sometimes it would even mess up my sleep at night, because it would be so painful, and it would be there all, just all day for days on end if I was to hit it just once. So I just never hit it. Well, when it came to like retracting your scapula and doing things correctly,
off that joint,
that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
When I started breaking down, okay, I want to do shoulder press because it's going to help me on bench. How can I do it without, having any pain? And usually when I am in pain, it's because I'm doing the lifts wrong. Mm-hmm. So let me look at how I'm doing these shoulder presses, and let me look at how someone else does it, and let me also get feedback from the people that I trust in the gym to see if I can, get this thing under wraps.
Right.
And the first day that I tried it, I had Jacob help me out. He's a powerlifter at my gym. I had him help me out on shoulder presses just with my form, and I was also filling it out with my body, just with the bar and with the 25 pound on each side.
Yeah.
So not a lot. And after that one session, I was able to do shoulder presses again, and without any pain. And fast forward a month later, now I'm doing shoulder presses with, I think I did 275 for 5x5. And guess what? No shoulder issues.
Yeah.
And not only that, now I know exactly what was causing these shoulder issues before. It's because I wasn't retracting my back, and it was all like wobbly on the way down, and
your scapula's all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. So now that I've ingrained that proper form in me, there's no way that I'm not going to do the proper form, because I know exactly what the proper form is. And that goes for every other lift now.
Yeah.
Like on deadlifts, you've seen my deadlifts, my back is tight. I no longer have any lower back problems. Mm-hmm. And then on bench, like I was saying earlier, no more pec problems, no more anything. So think about that.
It's interesting to me, man, because like when you're able to just take that step back, it's so worth it, but so many people won't.
Yeah, no.
So many people won't. I'm glad that you mentioned bench press too, because kind of an interesting point that's maybe in a different realm is being emotionally attached to exercises. Mm-hmm. So I've impinged my shoulder 3 times.
Yeah.
Barbell bench pressing every time. As soon as I figured out that I have the rib cage of a 12-year-old girl, I realized that, man, barbell bench press, I'm never going to be able to do it to my chest
Yeah.
pain-free. My body doesn't move like that. And so a lot of the times when we get married to exercises, like, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. Number one, you don't have to do anything. But number two, if you actually figure out what's better for you, like in my scenario, putting a slight incline or a slight decline to that press, it changes the game. You know, so not only do you have to be willing to take a step back, but you also have to understand that at the end of the day, the point of an exercise, unless competition like powerlifting, but the point of an exercise is to take you to a certain goal, not to cause you pain.
Yeah.
And man, something that just like really pisses me off in like this whole health and wellness, particularly like the bodybuilding, powerlifting world, is like you got to push through the pain. And man, pain is subjective as far as, or excuse me, not subjective, but there's types, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's lactic acid, if it's your muscles screaming at you, that's one thing. But if it's your shoulder feeling like it's about to explode, that's not normal. Like that's not a pain that you play through. That's a pain that's going to set you back long term. And if we could just take a step back and look at the big picture here, like, man, you gotta look long term. If something's causing you the wrong kind of pain, it's just not worth it. Like, figure out a different way to do it or do something different.
Yeah.
So,
and it's fun to not look at it long term, because, you know, in the short term, you can do whatever and there's not going to be any consequences. But
there's not going to be any progress either.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly. In the long term, there's not going to be any progress.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe in the short term, you'll be able to add, you know, 10, 15 pounds in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, what happens when that shoulder gets so impinged that you can't sleep at night?
Right.
And, you know, it gets to the point where you can't even bench.
Yeah.
And now you're out for a month and a half.
Yeah.
And, you know, when all you had to do was, like you said,
do
switch movements, lower the weight, like,
change your form.
Exactly. Just accept reality and stop. Just stop.
There's a lot of dogmatic ideas and
what does dogmatic mean?
Like, as far as you have to do this, you have to do that. Okay. This is the only way. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of that. Like, you have to squat, bench, and deadlift. No, you don't.
No,
you don't. Unless you want to be a power lifter. But no, you don't. You don't have to do dumbbell lateral raises. You don't have to. There's no exercise that's king. There's no exercise that's absolutely necessary. They're all just tools in a toolbox, man. And as soon as you figure out that you have different tools for different jobs, and sometimes certain tools work better for what you have at your disposal, the better.
Yeah.
So
you don't even have to lift in general. You know, if you like running, doing calisthenics,
yoga,
pull-ups, push-ups, yoga, like judo, you know, there's a bunch of different choices. Just because, you know, it's normal for, you know, all your friends or your family or the people that you follow on Instagram, they're all doing one thing, that doesn't mean you got to do it. You know, there's so many things that you can do that'll improve your life, physical fitness, and just overall well-being.
You know what I have found, though?
What's up?
And I know this is not, you know, for everybody.
Yeah.
But through my 5 years of training, I would say that majority of people who get a good grasp on what resistance training is, how to get better at it, and how to do it safely and long term, love it.
Yeah.
Love it. And maybe not so much that like it pulls them out of bed in the morning or something like that, but like most people, if they can get a good grasp on their training, it's at least something that they look forward to. It's not a chore anymore. It's not checking a box anymore because it's so empowering, man.
Yeah.
It's so like it's such a cool thing that you get to go to this place, and whether that's, you know, a room in your house that you work out in, or a gym, or whatever, or a track, or your neighborhood where you're running, but you get to go to this place where for whatever 45 minutes, an hour and a half, you don't have to focus on anything but the physical task at hand.
Yeah.
You know, you don't got to think about what you got to do the next day. You don't have to think about the bills you got to pay. All you got to think about is putting your best foot forward and trying to be a little bit better at the thing that you're doing. And I think we all need that. Like, it's meditative in some sense.
Yeah, and there's so much that you can gain from it that, you know, it's kind of a obvious decision.
I think so.
Hopefully for a lot of people it is. But
I guess that could be true in anything. You know, you were just throwing out calisthenics, judo, whatever. I mean, if you can see yourself making some sort of progress in those physical pursuits, like, that's awesome, man. So, But you want to wrap this one up?
Let's wrap it up.
Let's do it. That was PTC Cast episode 8.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you all for listening. I'm Alex Martin at Progress Through Change. You can follow my bodybuilding log at Alex Chris Martin. This is Cholito Saldana.
You can follow
The
my
great and
Instagram.
powerful.
Yeah, you can follow my Instagram at Cholito Saldana.
All right. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Should I clap again?
No, you don't have to.
No, I'm going to clap, and the second I clap, it's going to
Alright,
be
do it.
over in
Let's do
black.
it.